Alright, peace, y'all. Peace, peace, peace. So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the artist Prince. Alright, and basically, what actually led up to his demise. Alright, now, a lot of people have asked me, maybe a year or two ago to break down Prince's story. And then I'm going to get to Capital Steez next. Somebody asked me to talk about Capital Steez. So I'm going to break down the life story of Prince and what actually took place, all right, in his career that caused these people in power to, take him out of here. All right, now, Prince was born in Minneapolis on June 7th, 1958. His mother was actually a jazz singer by the name of Mattie Della, and his father was a pianist and songwriter by the name of John Lewis Nelson. All right, now many people would say Prince was actually groomed to be in the industry, which I wouldn't doubt. He also had an aunt and uncle that was also involved in the music business at this time as well. But at the age of 11, he was diagnosed with epilepsy and suffered from seizures. Okay, now Prince told his mother that an angel actually came to him and revealed to him that he wasn't going to be sick anymore. All right, now, plenty of people have heard stories and, about Prince being, involved in fortune telling, all right, throughout his career. All right, but we're going to get to some of these things down the line. All right, now, although his parents raised him to be a Jehovah's Witness, they also gave him leeway to create music at a very young age. Now, in 1975, at the age of 17, Prince's cousin formed a band which was called 94 East, all right, where Prince would be the guitarist and bass player for the group. All right, now 94 East became known locally in the Minneapolis area, and they released the album Minneapolis Genius, the historic 1997 recordings. All right, now this album didn't do too well, but it was, something local. All right, pretty much gave them an underground buzz to the point where it got Prince's feet wet to record on his own. All right. Now, a year later, in 1976, he created his demo tape with engineer Chris Moon. All right, Chris Moon actually landed him a management deal with a guy by the name of Owen Husney. All right, now Owen Husney was big at this time. He had a lot of connections with Warner Brothers, which is actually how Prince got his very first deal. All right.
He says, I've got the next greatest thing on the face of the earth. And I said, I've heard that a million times. And he said, I've got the next greatest thing on the face of the earth. You're not going to believe this. So I said, yeah, I'll see you later. Meanwhile, he comes and he's sitting on my couch in my office, and I won't answer the phone, and I won't let him see me. And at the end of the week, I finally felt sorry for him. And I said, all right, come on into my office. Play me this demo of this next greatest thing. So he puts it on, and I listened to the first song on there, and I said, you know what? This is real. This is the real thing. I mean, who's the group? He says, sit down. I said, come on, I don't sit down. He says, I'm telling you, sit down. And I said, no, just tell me who the group is. He says, well, it's one kid. He's 16. He's playing all the instruments, writing everything, and singing all the voices, and it's all him. So I sat down, and I said, well, does he live here? And he said, no, he's in New York visiting his sister. So I got on the phone and I called him, and he came back, and it turned out that was Prince. So at that point, I decided that I would probably try to manage him and get into the management business, and and be a part of all that.
Now, Prince's first album, For You, all right, this is my personal opinion. They focused on promoting the masculinity, all right, of Prince during his time. All right, now I did this video breaking down how, the era shifted, right, where they started to push more of an androgynous, all right, behavior in rock and roll, pop music, disco, even hip hop, right, where they was, wearing flamboyant clothes. Okay, but the album Dirty Mind, okay, was the album where he kind of like broke through or submitted to the powers that be. Okay, you see here he's got a G string on, you know what I'm saying? And this really wasn't his style. I'm gonna be honest with you. Prince was more of a rock pop artist, but the people in power said, "Hey, we're gonna, push you in this direction." Same thing we see with these hip hop artists today, wearing these feminine clothes and things of that nature, right? But Prince actually went on to becoming one of the greatest funk musicians in the world, okay, and dropped numerous albums. But it wasn't until he released his third album by the name of Controversy that made him a breakthrough artist. All right, now, since we're on the topic of controversy, all right, let's talk about what may have gotten Prince in trouble with the higher ups. All right, now, in 1993, he began to rebel against his record label, Warner Brothers, which they refused to release his backlog of enormous amounts of music. All right, now Prince had a lot of songs recorded, all right, during his time, and he was actually trying to get Warner Brothers to release it at a reasonable time. He wanted to drop the album every year. Okay, this is how much he was recording, but Warner Brothers was savoring, all right, a lot of his music. All right, he was moving too fast for Warner Brothers, and they wanted to slow him down. All right, now in 1994, when his obligations with Warner Brothers was up, he decided to fight back with legal obligations of ownership. All right, and this is when he changed his name to the love symbol and things like that, an artist formerly known as Prince. Now I'm gonna break this down for people that don't understand the music business, right? So let's just say, for instance, you sign a record deal using your government name, all right? Now that record company that you signed to actually owns your government name and everything that you do, okay? That involves your government name, which is why I think that's a bad idea. So if you take a person like Kendrick Lamar, believe it or not, Interscope owns his government name. All right, that's always a bad idea to do. This is why people come up with pseudonyms. For those that don't know, a pseudonym is an alternate name, that you could come up with. Like, my real name is not Jay Marvelous, but what I'm saying, it's a pseudonym. All right, so this is why he changed his name to the love symbol, or artist formerly known as Prince. All right, now when he changed his name, this actually caused his next release under Warner Brothers to be shelved, all right, which was going to be the Black Album. Now, Prince was very slick, okay? He was also a Gemini, so he was very slick with how he did a lot of his business, right? So he basically bootlegged the album and released it on his own, but he didn't really say that, all right? He did it under the radar to avoid contractual breachment. All right, now, Prince began to take legal actions against Warner Brothers in the fight for his masters. All right, now, many people believe that this would be a slight to the machine that actually created him and gave him a chance. All right, now, a lot of those artists back in the 70s and 80s, they signed lifetime deals. All right, which is why you see people like Willie Nelson, Ron Isley, and all of these old cats, they still making music because they basically, all right, have lifetime deals. These companies own their name. All right, they own their name, so they cannot just say, you know what, I don't want to do music anymore, because they're actually a slave. This is why Prince wrote slave on his face. They owned him. Okay, they owned his name. Now, if he would have changed his name to something else, they wouldn't own him as much, right? He could just change his name and go to a different label, but they owned his name. All right, now, while fighting for legal battles, Prince would make public appearances on national television and inform a lot of other artists, such as hip-hop artists, how not having ownership of their music is hurtful to the artist.
Well, it's not your game. You didn't make the rules, so everything comes hard. And as long as you're signed to a contract, you're going to take a minority share of the winnings. A select few of us will do well. The majority will not. So as a people, we'll be considered a minority. But stop. Let's take a moment and look at yourselves. There's nothing minor about you. You are a blessed people. You're the most talented on earth, and you are still grateful. That is why upon winning in their game, you always thank God. Tonight I would like to ask one favor of you. Imagine what we'll all be like in our own game. Peace and love for one another.
Now, you saw that clip there, and people like Russell Simmons that own Def Jam, you know, they didn't want to hear that type of stuff, especially for hip-hop artists, because, you know, that was a new way to control rappers, all right? And, you know, your masters is very important. You know, I tell people this all the time. Try not to give up your masters, and if you really want a record deal, like, make some type of, you know, negotiations where they don't own anything, you know, do distribution deals or whatever. All right, but they saw this as a tactic, you know, to turn all other artists against their labels. All right, and this would actually cause other artists to take the same steps as Prince did. All right, so they gave Prince his masters back just to avoid conflict. Like, yo, you know, sweep that under the rug. You know, don't talk about it no more. All right, and Prince actually did that. He went on a little hiatus. You know, people didn't really see him. He was performing shows, but he, you know, he stayed off the radar. All right, now, during this time, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was only a few artists that actually owned their masters. From what I believe, it was Prince, Paul McCartney, LL Cool J, and maybe a couple other people. But a lot of people didn't actually have their masters. All right, now, with Prince, you know, having all of these hit songs, okay, he was basically living off of royalties, which is why we didn't see him, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s. All right, a lot of people thought he fell off, but he was actually living off of those royalties. All right, now, during this time, he became an avid listener to Dick Gregory. All right, now, around this time, you know, he focused on the government's tactics, okay, to destroy humanity. But it wasn't until, all right, he went public about chemtrails and exposing a lot of the government's actions.
Who have you felt most often like in the ring fighting the record industry? Like Jack or the opponent?
Oh, like Jack.
Like Jack?
Yeah.
Tell me why.
Well, because I knew I was right. Mm-hmm. You know, we talked about this in our very first interview and conversation together. It's obvious now that artists are supposed to own their master recordings. I mean, in the future, it'll be unconscionable to even think you can take somebody's creation and claim ownership of it. See, unfortunately, this discussion is going to start to barrel into a discussion about the human genome and the DNA and all the rest of it. When it gets there, then we're going to be in the deep water. Mm-hmm. See, so it's better to start the conversation now before we get into God talk, you know.
Tell me about Dreamer.
Oh, well, when I saw the State of the Black Union, Dick Gregory really moved me and a lot of my friends. I show it to everybody that comes over the house, especially white folks, because they need to hear that, you know, so that they know more about all of us. Mm-hmm. Because what he said affects all of us. He said something that really hit home about this phenomena of chemtrails. And, you know, when I was a kid, I used to see these trails in the sky all the time. And say, oh, that's cool. A jet just went over. And then you started to see a whole bunch of them. And the next thing you know, everybody in your neighborhood was fighting and arguing, and you didn't know why. Mm-hmm. Okay, and and you really didn't know why. I mean, everybody was fighting. So he started riffing about the chemtrails, and he started to say things that hit home so hard. And I would recommend that everybody try to get what he said online or wherever and try to get a copy of it and just listen to it. Because I was so moved that I had to write the song. The other thing is the first line of the song says I was born on the same plantation in the United States of the red, white, and blue. And we live in a place now that feels just about like a plantation. We're all indentured servants, you know. When I found out there were 8 presidents before George Washington, I wanted to smack somebody. You know, I wanted to know why I was taught otherwise. Just tell me the whole story. I'll fill in the blanks, but don't, you know, don't tell me something that you think I'm supposed to know.
We're indentured servants and we got a black president now?
I don't vote. I have nothing to do with it. I got no dog in that race.
And for those who would cuss me out and slap me in person if I didn't ask you why?
Well, the reason why is because I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and we've never voted. And that's not to say that I don't think Barack Obama, President Obama, is a very smart individual, and he seems like he means well. Prophecy is what we all have to go by now. It's very interesting. I did a sold-out concert in London. We played 21 nights in a row, and all the concerts were sold out. When I would watch television over there, and you'd see the United Nations feed, the direct feed from the United Nations, you'd hear them talk a lot about religion. You'd hear the Bible mentioned constantly. This is not what we're used to in the United States. It's almost as though there's no need for God and no need for religion and justice in politics. So there's supposed to be a separation of church and state over here. We can't have a separation of state and morality, though. And you know, songs like Dreamer and Even Feel Good, it's the same thing.
I got good news and bad news. The bad news first, since I like ended on good.
Now, after he made the statement on Tavis Smiley's show, all right, he was invited to perform at the White House, okay, but he declined. All right, now Obama actually responded with this statement right here.
And finally, with respect to Prince, I love Prince because he put out great music, and he was a great performer. I didn't know him well. He came to perform at the White House last year and was extraordinary and creative and original and full of energy. And so it's a remarkable loss, and I'm staying at Winfield House, the U.S. Ambassador's residence. It so happens our ambassador has a turntable, and so this morning we played Purple Rain and Delirious just to get warmed up before we left the house for important bilateral meetings like this.
It's a home of great music, and the ambassadors brought a lot of brilliant talent.
Now, my belief, a person with such influence such as Prince, right, to inform people worldwide about chemtrails and how the government was playing games with people, you know, this kind of put him on the blacklist, okay? And you know, like I said, when you wake up out of that coma, okay, because a lot of these artists are in the coma, but when you wake up out of that coma and start to realize what you're doing to people, yeah, it becomes, you know, a little bit dangerous for you, okay, because you signed the contract to keep your mouth closed. All right, now if you don't do that, yeah, it's going to be a problem. All right, now I'm going to show you guys this clip before of L.A. Reid, okay, basically explaining the elevator. All right.
I'm not saying it because we lost the great one, but to me, he's always been the greatest, you know, and no one's even close.
L.A. Reid paying tribute to Prince on CBS This Morning on Friday. The famed record exec shared an eerie story about his friend.
The one thing that, kind of spooked me about it all was he has a song called Let's Go Crazy.
Yeah.
And it says, don't let the elevator bring us down. One time when I was with him privately, he said, you know what the elevator is, right?
No.
I said, no, what's the elevator? He said, well, the elevator is the devil, right? It scared me. I don't like to talk like that, but he said that. And so for me, it was like really haunting when I read that he was found in an elevator.
E.T. confirmed the iconic artist was found dead in an elevator on Thursday. L.A. Reid says he believed Prince to have been in good health.
Did he have health problems?
That I don't know, right? What I know is that he was really health conscious. He was a vegan. He didn't abuse alcohol. I didn't know of him abusing drugs. He worked out, so, that also really concerned me because it made me think that, wow, so.
Now, with Prince knowing about the elevator, okay, this is all occultic practices. Now, for those that don't know, there is a such thing called the elevator ritual. All right, now the elevator ritual is a popular urban legend that involves a ritual to summon a supernatural entity by riding an elevator to certain floors in a specific order. All right, now there is no basic evidence to support the existence of an entity or whatever the case may be, but many people have reported, okay, when you press certain numbers in the elevator, like say for instance, I ain't gonna tell y'all how to do it, but say for instance, like, you press the 3rd floor, and then, you go to the 6th floor, and then you go to the 9th floor, all right, but then you skip a couple numbers and go to the 13th floor. Apparently somebody will come on the elevator, okay, and then people make deals with the devil while they're on the elevator. All right, now I can't give y'all instructions on how to do it, but if you really interested, you can look on Google and, find out about that nonsense. All right, now we're going to break down Prince's home, okay, and a lot of occultic themes that were in his house. Okay, now, like I said earlier in the video, Prince was no stranger to the occult. Okay, he was very familiar with the occult. Okay, and I'm gonna break down some of this stuff here. All right, now we see this is the lobby, okay, of Prince's home. Okay, now in this home, in this lobby right here, right, you see that you see the sky. Okay, and then on the floor you see the moon, okay? But this is all occultic practices. If people are involved in sun and moon worship, that's a sign of witchcraft, all right? Mostly people that practice witchcraft, they focus on sun and moon worship and stuff like that. So to see this type of structure here, Prince was no stranger to this, okay? He was no stranger to this stuff right here. Now, as you can see here, this is basically his area, all right, where he contained a lot of memorabilia, all right, but we already see the chessboard floor, all right, which represents duality, that good and evil, all right. For Prince to have this in his home, some people credited it as him being a Freemason, okay, but there's no record showing that he was involved in Freemasonry. I'm pretty sure he knew the aspects of it. He was an avid reader and knew about a lot of these practices that took place in the music industry. Now, this is in the hallway, okay, of Prince's home here. All right, now, as you can see, Prince was very into the third eye, okay? He was always into the third eye. A lot of his artwork and album covers, he mainly focused on the third eye, okay? He always would show one eye symbolism, which let us know that he was down with the program, all right? There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If people know about this stuff, okay, they're using it for their own benefit, all right? Now, with him having this third eye here, okay, with the capstone of the pyramid at the top and the light beaming up from it, he had enlightenment, okay? He had enlightenment of these spiritual practices, all right? And a lot of people don't want to believe that Prince was involved, but he actually was. Okay, he was definitely involved. There's not one artist out there, that you can find that doesn't, involve themselves in this type of practice. All right, so just seeing that there let me know, that he was definitely into it. All right, but this is something interesting I want to point out here. Okay, like I said, he was into the third eye practices. Okay, now you see this lady here making the silence is golden, okay, hand gesture, right, with the third eye above her in her forehead. Okay, now I'm not sure if that person behind that picture is Jimi Hendrix, but I want you guys to pay very close attention, okay, because he knew who was coming after him. Now you see here, there is $13, okay, above that picture, okay, $13 along with the Bible. All right, now we all know the significance of the number 13, right? This basically goes down with a lot of these organizations, okay, these Freemason organizations, and he knew that these people wanted him out of here, okay? Now, like I said, when he partaking in taking an oath and all of that stuff, and agreed to, not break any codes or whatever he did, going out of that, breaking that oath or breaking that pact will get you in trouble. All right. So to see this here, this was very ironic for him to leave that there. Like he knew he was going to die, and I'm going to break down how he actually knew he was going to die. Now, as you can see here, this is the lounge area, all right, and he has a giant eye in the middle. Okay, now some people say, yo, what's wrong with the eye? There's nothing wrong with the eye, Jay. That's spiritual enlightenment. That just means he's into enlightenment, all right? But this is what I'm saying. God said we shouldn't even involve ourselves, all right, with this type of stuff, okay? Like, some people say that is God. The eye on the pyramid is God. I mean, hey, listen, if that's what you believe, hey, man, by all means. Me personally, I don't believe that, okay? So to see him involving himself with a lot of this occultic practices, and what I found so, kind of strange about the situation was that, before he died, he was focusing on religion, right? For those that don't know, he basically went back into the Jehovah Witness religion, right? And around the maybe 2021, he became a Jehovah's Witness, but he involved a lot of the mysticism that he was practicing into Christianity. Now, some people may say, hey, Jay, if you read the Bible has a lot of occultic ties to it, right? Which, some people, may believe, and that could be true in a sense, because, it's not far-fetched, all right? But, you can't serve two masters, okay? And, you just can't do that. You have to pick a side, all right? So eventually, he had to make a decision, you know what I'm saying? Once he left here, he had to make a decision. Now, I'm going to show you guys this. This is kind of crazy here, but I'm going to show you guys his last post on Instagram before he died. Okay, now it says here, just when you thought you were safe. This was the day before he died. Okay, he posted this on Instagram. Okay, now we all know that they found Prince dead near his elevator in his home. All right, but funny thing is, well, it's not funny, but ironically, he didn't get high. Prince didn't use drugs. Okay, but they found prescription drugs, all right, with his name on it, okay, in his home. Scattered powdered substance around. I don't believe that once in my mind that he was actually getting high. He took very good care of himself. Just like you've seen L.A. Reid said in that clip that, he didn't know Prince of getting high. So there was some type of conspiracy behind his death. All right, but like I said, all right, there were some people that were higher up that were pretty much tired of his nonsense. Okay, and it happens all the time. Every last one of these artists that, give a little backlash, from in their career, they end up on a targeted list. Okay, now, when I see these type of practices, right, I already know, like we already should know that, you know, people like Prince, you know, they broke the rules. Okay, they broke the rules. All right, and it's a sad situation, man. You know, Prince has been gone since 2016, but you know, it's just a sad situation. You know, he was in good shape. You know, he took care of himself. You know what I'm saying? And you know, I guess, you know, when you sign up for that stuff, man, you know, you gotta be all the way in, as they say, right? All the way in. All right, but yeah, man, I just, you know, and you know, a lot of people are Prince fans out there, man, and it's crazy, like just seeing, you know, this stuff happen time and time again. You know what I'm saying? Especially in the music industry and in Hollywood. You know, it gets depressing talking about a lot of these people of, you know, them just wanting to stand up for themselves, and then next thing you know, something tragic happens to them. You know, but when you get involved in that business, you know, your job is to basically keep the general population dumb and create whatever they want you to create. Music, act, play basketball. The minute you start speaking out, you know, they have a problem with that because you're supposed to keep, you know, society dumb, deaf, and blind. That's your job. You know what I'm saying? That's your job. With that being said, y'all, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Like I said, I'm going to get to Capital Steez next. If you guys have any requests for me to talk about, I'm definitely going to do that for y'all, man. And peace. Be safe out there, y'all.